Welcome to another James Loves Butter episode. Good to have you all. Welcome back. Heroin. Just a quick one. Thanks to anybody returning, any subscribers. Please like, please subscribe, please comment. It helps the channel, helps it grow. Thanks to everybody that's messaged and commented on the previous videos and stuff and the interactions we've had. And thanks for some feedback, really helpful, useful. Thanks to John, a very old friend that gave me some feedback and gave me some insights around some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today, actually. And my friend Steve, thanks for the support. Just to say a disclaimer, I know we have to put it out there, I'm not glorifying drug use, I'm not glorifying any criminality or anything like that. I'm just giving you some perspective of an old mindset and, you know, some clarity around some things regarding the subject matter which I'm talking about, which is very real for a lot of people. I'm going to say hi to Andy as well. He gave me this comment, a friend that's also now a recovered drug addict, and he sent me this message and it said, the only really loving relationship I ever committed properly to and really ever felt something significant and worthwhile with and was filled with unconditional respect and was nurturing and I got the exact feedback I desired from was with what? ? And I thought about it and processed it, and we had a little bit of back and forth, some interaction, and his answer was heroin. And I really had to think about that because I'm going to talk about the darkness of heroin addiction, absolutely, and what that looks like. And, you know, some of the previous uploads that I've done, you know, touch on that stuff. However, a conversation I had with an old school friend called John, talking about, you know, the beginnings of that and what that looks like. And obviously, look, I'm not advocating drugs, and Dapper Last has got a podcast at the moment, Menace to Sobriety, and he's sort of been targeted a little bit for glorifying drug use and stuff, and he's not doing that either, and I'm certainly not doing that. But there has to be some attraction at the beginning, right? It has to have some romanticism or something that leads us to that point where we take certain substances. So I needed to reflect back on the beginning, and that's not really what today is about, because today I'm really talking about an experience of, you know, when I died in a Sikh temple, you know, hence the title of this upload. However, I do want to touch a little bit on the beginnings of that journey of the world of heroin. You know, heroin chic, the 90s, you remember it? Kate Moss and all the wafer-like models and the black and white pictures and the sunken eyes and the eyeshadow and stuff. And, excuse me, heroin chic was a big thing. It was a look. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it, really? Heroin, she's my heroine. I mean, I had an affair with cocaine, you know, and I thought she was my white lady, and she turned on me and cut me to ribbons. It's interesting, but, you know, I want to say for myself and my spiral into addiction and the drugs that I came about, and some people find it really difficult to think about how one with a sane mind could actually even go about ever trying something like heroin. And I get it. So today with clarity, I can see that would be an insane idea. But, and I know we all have different beginnings, and what I'm talking about with myself and my own upbringing, it was something that I was never surrounded by. I was never privy to it. It wasn't like I lived in a council estate and saw the ramifications and the consequences of heroin addiction. I just didn't see it, so I was oblivious to it. So in my mind, my romanticism with any of the drugs actually, but say let's just talk about heroin and throw a bit of cocaine in there, and we've got the crack cocaine stuff that went on, which was a different beginning for me because it was in the 90s with crack cocaine, and it was Versace Machino crack cocaine, which was just a pure form of cocaine. So I thought I was, you know, part of the medical fraternity, and or was like a scientist. That's a side note, but heroin for me within my mind's eye was, you know, looking at lyrics like this, golden brown texture like sun lays me down through my mind she runs throughout the night, no need to fight, never a frown. with golden brown. I paraphrase that, something like that. You know, so I was looking at stuff like that and thinking about stuff, and Bowie, and I know later on Kurt Cobain, which was very tragic. And all these guys were very tragic with their addiction and the substance misuse that went on. But when you're in a mindset of looking at or glorifying things, which is a strange perspective to have. You know, it's like looking at Tony Montana in Scarface and thinking it's a great film, it's uplifting, it's motivational. Really didn't go that well for him at all. You know, and we can look at things with different perspective, hindsight and clarity today, absolutely. But, you know, the way I viewed things then was just delusional. And then finishing with another song lyric, which is by Johnny Cash, which is called Hurt, which is a 9 Inch Nails song. It says, "The needle tears a hole, the old familiar sting. Try to kill it all away, but I remember everything. What have I become? My sweetest friend. Everyone I know goes away in the end." The reality of addiction, heroin addiction, it's don't fancy your chances. But yeah, like I say, the Rolling Stones, Bowie, Kurt Cobain later, that famous, infamous, was it the 27 Club? All that sort of stuff. Was it 27 Club? 26 or 27? I don't know, I've lost the year. Irrespective of that, I want to talk about heroin. I want to talk about, because, why would you touch heroin? That's disgusting. That must be awful. That's absolutely horrendous. Why would you do that? Well, actually, the reality is heroin, or derogatives of heroin, is the greatest painkiller or natural painkiller known to mankind. And they use it in the medical fraternity. And I remember, and just to give you a snapshot of, you know, if you imagine in the 90s, going out, I had the whole raving culture and that sort of stuff that was going on. And a lot of guys did get into heroin from that culture because they were taking a lot of uppers, and then slowly integrated was heroin, which was a downer, and then it'll bring you down, you chill, you relax. And, you know, they weren't always aware of the consequences, the ramifications of that. And before you knew it, you're knee deep in heroin addiction. You can't get out of it. I mean, it's horrendous. But I will talk about, I'd lightly brushstrokes with heroin in about maybe 1998, where I was definitely using a lot of cocaine, and I just drifted into smoking a bit of crack cocaine. You know, I had a multitude of different people I would socialise with. You know, one minute I could be in the upper echelons of society, and the next minute I'm in the undercurrent and underbelly of society, which they both equally impressed and I enjoyed, and got motivated by knowing different people in different walks of life, and I could always communicate and get on with different people, which was, you know, a skill that would later put me on a different path, and I could utilise that positively. You know, and I love conversation. And Kel Surprise, you can tell that I love talking. Just to let you know, I do this in one take, and there's no rehearsals, so it ain't perfect. I remember coming across a guy that we did some coke. He occasionally smoked some crack, and he pulled out of his back pocket, which may seem insane to say, but he had a little wrap of heroin. And I remember I'd been doing some coke, so I was pretty charged up like Scarface. And Amsterdam ain't a nice place off your face. And what happened is he pulled it out, he ran a couple of lines, and it was kind of mystical and magical, because again, I hadn't seen the destruction of that substance around me, so it was new, and I thought I was different, and I thought I was a cut above the rest, and I thought I had a bit of je ne sais quoi, you know, but it Del Boy. But what would I say when I did those couple of lines? I literally did a couple of lines, and I did feel that very cliched saying that goes, oh, I hate it, but that ready Brett glow, or, you know, feeling at one with yourself and at peace. Well, it's a very strong narcotic, isn't it? It's going to have an effect. But that was literally a couple of lines, and I think I did that twice, and then I didn't come into contact with it again until probably 2001, 2002, give or take, if my memory serves me right. And what happened was, I'd moved to a new city. I was evacuated. I had to leave London for some problems of my own making, and, you know, my world was getting smaller and I had nowhere to turn, so I ended up going back to a family member in another city, and God bless her. And I was going out back into the social parameters, ideology, social equalities, a lot of words, isn't there? So I went back out into the social world of drinking, taking pills, cocaine, working in the week, all that sort of stuff. And cool, I met a girl. That's another story. And we were going out and doing drugs together and going out and having a great time and all that sort of stuff. Going to nightclubs and boozers and, you know, fraternising with the fraternity, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, wheeling and dealing, talking to him, talking to her, getting on with him, getting on with her, buy this, sell that, all that sort of stuff. I was a dab hand at the old 5-finger discount as well. That stuff was going on. I thought I was unique. I'd come from London. I had a slightly different dress sense back in this time. So I thought I was a cut above the rest and all that sort of thing, you know. Again, very delusional, very selfish and very self-centered and egocentric. And I came back this one night and we came back this one night and we were talking, whatever. And she pulled out of her bag, in her wallet, in her purse, some heroin. I mean, it might sound a bloody weird thing to say that some girl that you've just started seeing or whatever suddenly pulls out some heroin. I mean, what? But if you knew the bigger picture, her ex-boyfriend was currently in prison and he kind of introduced a bit of heroin to her because he picked up within the prison system. So it's all these little decisions and people and interactions that, you know, you could say it was luck or unlucky or me being receptive to trying these things, which was you know, I was always a bit of a, I guess you want to say I was a bit of a risk taker. I was a risk taker. And that risk taking could have been honed into another manner of living, which people do, you know, as in, you know, if you're in high adrenaline, high octane sports, you've got to be a risk taker, you know. So maybe if I'd have been in a different channel, I could have utilised that fearlessness in other areas. However, it manifested itself in criminology and crime and a different way of life. And anyway, long story short, she pulled out the heroin, and I said, I'd almost forgotten that I'd tried it a little bit before, and I kind of said, in a naive kind of way, but I wasn't that bloody naive, but around that substance I wasn't awake or aware of. Look, listen, even if I'd have known, I remember talking to, you see, ominous warnings I failed to heed. I had a friend, Wesley, good to see you, mate. I look forward to seeing you soon, sorry. And he goes, I remember him telling me about heroin, and we'd smoke crack together, and he said, listen, never touch that stuff. It's dangerous, it destroys families, it destroys you, you know, yada, yada, yada. But I didn't take heed, and I remember saying to her, what's it going to do? And she says, well, you'll have a couple of lines, you'll probably be sick out the window, and then you can, how do I put this politely? You can make love to me all night. And I was like, nice, that sounds good to me, pass it over. I couldn't run it or do anything with it at that time, do it on silver foil. And so she ran a couple of lines. I literally had a couple of lines. I puked out the window, and then I was just like, train spines, remember, he sinks into the carpet. That kind of deal. And that was nice. I enjoyed that. So then it becomes a process where you don't need to spend much money. I've been used to spending, you know, 40, 50, 60, 70, and the rest money on cocaine on a night out, throw a couple of pills in, throw a few double branding cokes, throw a few vodka Red Bulls, throw a few absinthes, a few tequilas. You know, I could spend 300 quid on a night out without even putting a foot into my bloody vintage Gucci loafers. Do you know what I mean? And so, you know, to think, well, a few lines of that, I feel like I'm in heaven. That's lovely. I don't see any ramifications or any consequences of this. Yeah, I didn't understand the physical dependency that comes with heroin addiction. I didn't know that, and I didn't know how difficult that was going to be to escape or get out. Well, you know, it destroyed my life for many, many years, and it destroyed a lot of other people's lives around me for many, many years, you know. So I don't say any of this lightheartedly. Some things I'll say tongue-in-cheek, and I'm being a little bit lighthearted about a subject matter, but, you know, don't ever misconstrue that this was deadly, deadly serious. And I'm not going to go too far into this story, but fundamentally, trying a bit of heroin and using it, something, you know, it was nice, it was wonderful, it was a great feeling. Of course it bloody was, come on, you know. So my early dalliance into heroin was nice. I was together, I was smoking a bit, I was relaxed, I was horizontal, I was chilled, I was listening to certain music, and I was getting in touch with the 60s, the 70s. I remember at one point, I think I put some eyeshadow on, thought I looked like David Bowie, you know, or maybe then I was channeling my inner Johnny Depp, and, you know, all this sort of stuff, you know, heroin chic. I thought, yeah, if I met Kate Moss, I'd get Kate Moss, you know, all this sort of stuff. Crazy. So that's how you can see I'm trying to paint a picture of how easily it was for me to get sucked into that. And obviously the substance eventually takes hold of you and you have no control of it, and the physical dependency, and, you know, it just gets so dark. Anyway, what I'm getting at now is this. So that was years ago, and then years later, after years of heroin addiction, and I went from learning how to roll it, smoke it on foil and run it and all that sort of thing, which I was also interested in, fascinated in that sort of stuff, actually then became intravenous, injecting heroin, injecting crack and heroin together, you know, and doing damage to yourself, to your body, trying to find a vein, you know, rattling, running around trying to make money to score because you're clucking, you're rattling. It's absolutely disgusting. And, you know, the loss of family, the loss of homes, the loss of children, the loss of, you know, all the above. You know, I've not been employed. Again, many prison sentences, as I've discussed in my previous channels, you know, absolutely horrendous. And I found myself again in a homeless shelter. I'll name it the Salvation Army, because, you know, my heart goes out to the Salvation Army, because they helped me at a time when I was on death's door and I'd given up and all hope was lost in life. And was in that place, and, you know, my day-to-day living was dictated to by waking up. I can't believe I've woken up. What am I going to do today just to get another tenner, just to get some gear, and that Groundhog Day, that terrific cycle, and just absolutely horrendous, repetitive, round and round and round and round. And I don't remember how it came about that day, but I managed to graft some money. I'd got whatever, 50, 60, 70 quid, and I bought some crack and heroin, let's call it 3 of each. 3 rocks of crack, 3 bags of heroin, and I've got some Zopiclone and some diazepam, Valium, which is always a deadly and fatal combination, but also a very attractive combination. And so what I'd done is I'd taken a couple of Valleys, a couple of Diazes, a couple of Zopiclone, which are a sleeping tablet, but the Valleys kick in quicker because I'd always crunch them and dissolve them on my tongue, but the Zoppies take a little bit longer. Bear in mind, whilst I was in this place, I was not eating properly at all. I mean, literally, if I had beans on toast once every 2 days and a Mars bar, you'd be lucky. You know, I was at about 8 stone, so I was very underweight. I wouldn't eat much, and when I'd have crack and heroin, then I'd probably try and get some food. Not initially with the crack hit, but once that had subsided and the heroin kicks in and just you get that part of it, you start to feel normal. Because at this point, you're using heroin just to feel normal. So I'd taken a couple of Zoppies, a couple of diazepam, and then I bought some crack and heroin. And what I would have done is injected 2 rocks of crack and a bag of heroin. So I get the higher intensity of the up. Then that starts to curtail and come down, and then I get the leveling off of the heroin, and then go, and I had a couple of bags of heroin in my sock, which is what I'd use as my wallet, because I didn't have a wallet, and I didn't have pockets to put them in, because I'd probably wearing tracksuit bottoms, and I'd always lose them, you know, so. And money never stayed on me, you know. The sock was my wallet for my cash and my drugs, always. And I'd probably have my room key around my neck. And so I took the zopiclone, took the diazepam, had the hit. And then it was like, once that subsided a little bit, the crack wore down, I wanted some food. Well, at this point, what I was doing across me from this hostel that I was staying in was a Sikh temple. God bless these Sikh brothers and sisters, because what they did in these temples is they provide food for their own community and for people like me. So I would go in, not every day, but every other day. I didn't want to seem to take the, you know, and I'd go in, you have to take your feet off, take your shoes off before you go in, and then you go in, and then you go up to these little counters and they serve you with potatoes and chapatis, or, you know, variants of that stuff, and, you know, you'd eat, and it was lovely, and it was so kind of them. And some of the elders would look down with distrust and disdain to some of us guys that would go in from the hostel. But you know what they really did was show us love and kindness, you know, and I always, you know, it's always within my heart to think that these people and these people within these communities, you know, look out for people like me, you know, and they don't have to. So I used to go in there. Anyway, I went in there. By the time I got in there, the crack had worn off. I got some food, and then what happened is the zopiclone and the diazepam started to mix with my bloodstream, or take effect within my mind and my bloodstream, and the heroin come together. And what happened is, what it seemed to have done was to have passed out on my chapati and my curry. And the two people that I was with carried me. I mean, I had to obviously be told this stuff because I was passed out. Tiny temper. And I passed out, and they took me back to my room. But what they would have done, they'd taken me through the hostel and tried not to alert any, you know, the attention of anybody. I'd gone over, or you know, I was gouging out, as they may have seen it, which happens is almost a sweet spot that you're trying to reach when using heroin. You know, that to nod out, to nod off, you know, which is actually where you're sort of dancing with death. Crazy, isn't it? And it turned out that they took me back to my room, they got me back in, they already got my key, opened the door, put me on the bed and stuff, and I was, and you know, I've been there in the other way around when people have gone over and or I've attempted to bring them back round, or whatever I have to do, if I have to call an ambulance and all that other stuff, and, you know, potentially try to help save their lives, but I probably would have emptied their pockets first, and took their drugs and money, and then saved them. Ruthless. It's an absolutely terrible an affliction to being addicted to heroin, crack, any form of addiction, but you know, this is a particularly ruthless one. And anyway, long story short, I was dead. My heart had stopped and I was flatlined. I was gone. So what these two guys did, and I don't even really recall who it was, but they would have reported it, rang the ambulance, and the emergency services attended. They came in my room, and I don't remember too much about, well, I don't remember any of that bit, obviously. But anyway, I'd have been given a shot of naloxone. That didn't work. Then another shot, and then they had to use are they defibrillators? I can't even say the word. And they did that a couple of times, and it brought me back round. So my heart started again, and I gained consciousness. And I looked around me, and when you're injected with naloxone, which obviously just reverses the heroin it removes the opiate receptors off the brain. I'm not too technical on that, but it cleans them and it brings you back, and you almost go into instant withdrawal, which is horrible. However, I don't recall that happening, but I know they would have attempted that first. But, you know, I was on a lot of methadone, I was on a lot of heroin, so, you know, it was deeply entrenched into my brain chemistry and my opiate receptors and stuff. So they brought me back to life, and I came round, and I remember, and this is where I remember things clearly. He goes, "Oh, James," whatever they said that was kind and gentle, the words that they use, you know, "Can you see me? Can you hear me? What day is it? What's your name? What's the date?" All that. I never bloody knew the date then, and I never really do now. So It's not really any use asking me that question, but of course I could say my name. Where are you? I went, yeah, I'm in my room at the Salvation Army. So I was disorientated. I just bloody died. So they said to me, James, you need to go to the hospital. You just died. We brought you back to life. Let's go to the hospital. And I'll be like, and this is the craziness. I'm like, it's fine. I'm okay. Don't worry about it. You're overreacting. I'll be fine. And they're like, but James, you just died. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I started to realise and recall that I had 2 bags of heroin secreted in my sock. Nice. Just what you need once you've just died is another shot of heroin. And it took me, God bless them, a good 15, 20 minutes to convince them. They couldn't make me go to the hospital. I mean, I was breathing, my vital signs were, and I had to really persuade them that I was okay and I don't need to go to the hospital. They went. I got up, I cooked up another hit of heroin and I injected it. And what happened? Bang, I was gone again. I woke up 24 hours later in exactly the same spot. And how I didn't die or how I came back round, I never know. And really, I don't think there's much more I can say to that story. But how we minimise and trivialise losing our life in addiction, it becomes, the addictive life becomes normal to us, and we become surrounded by people that die or go over, bringing back to life. Ambulances, how we put a strain on hospitals and the medical services and all that sort of thing, today really, it hurts and it upsets that, we can be so selfish or we can become so ill, and the pressure and strains that we put on those services as a result of, the situations and circumstances that we get ourselves into. But I just want to say, I guess to wrap it up is just at the very beginning how I saw it as a good idea to try a bit of heroin, bit of the gear, bit of brown, China white, all these different names. And what I thought would be fun, would be a great idea, led to me to years. I mean, when did I start using heroin? Let's say 2003. Properly, no, 2002 probably, about 26, give or take. And it wasn't until 2014 that I eventually got clean. Yeah, so it's a lot of years, a lot of pain, a lot of misery, a lot of institutions, losing big chunks of my life, not being a son, not being a brother, not being a father. It's absolutely horrendous. So, message to people out there is, look, if you find yourself in these situations or coming up against these things, really take a long, hard look at your life choices and decisions, and if you're in this at the moment, you experience this, man, my thoughts go out to you, and you'll have access to ways out, whether you want to take them or not, that's a different matter. But I certainly got to a point when I longed to escape that life and what was happening. The party was over, the fun and games were over. That's about it. Thanks for listening.